Okay, good afternoon to you. I'm Merv Wyeth. We're going to start the presentation shortly, but what we want to do as per the chat is to get you logged into Mentimeter, and that's at menti.com, and you can see the code there is 227153. So we really do want your participation today within Mentimeter. I can see a few of you are already there. Some hearts coming in and some thumbs up, so that's absolutely great. You'll be able to ask us questions via menti.com and also via GoToMeeting, so in two different places. So if you're a QR code person, that's the QR code for the session today, and by all means use that. So as I say, as many of you as possible to use Mentimeter, and then we can get your views, questions, etc., etc. So please do log into that. You'll get the most out of this event. We've got room for 100 attendees. We've got something like 80 at the moment. There's a lot more bookings than that, so there will be some people that are disappointed. We're going to up the capacity shortly, so that'll make things a little better. Thank you for those that are already in menti.com, and let's kind of get into this particular webinar. So what we want to know first is what term best describes the main focus of the organization in which you work. So if we can have your responses on that. And Ruth, although I haven't properly introduced you yet, feel free to jump in and comment on anything that we're seeing come in at the moment. Obviously, there's quite a wide variety. Yeah.
Transit ticketing, that's an interesting one. We've got someone from health, or at least one person from healthcare. Thank you for being in that line of activity at the moment. Banking and finance used to be mine. Wow, such variety.
Yes. So that's good. We should have some really good interaction and some great questions, I'm sure, but software winning out there. So keep logging into menti.com if you haven't already, and it would be great to get your feedback. So next question here is, what type of project related job role do you typically perform? So I've created, if you like, three main role groups here. So leadership, that's things like your SROs and your sponsors, managers, your directors, your delivery specialists, project management managers, risk specialists, control specialists, etc. And then the one that I really sit within is the business analysis change specialists. So, and again, we can see what's happening there. Any thoughts on that, Ruth?
I'm interested to see how many project delivery specialists we have here, and that you're in the tiny minority, Merv, with your business analysis.
Indeed.
So, and I was pleased to see we had some students.
Indeed. So I'm getting various messages to say we're full and no one else can get in, so that's great. It's really good that you've arrived here with us today. So moving then into the topic, and there will be more questions in Mentimeter, so do stay with us. So social intelligence, why we need it and how we can get it. So project managers and teams will agree that connecting stakeholders to the goals of the project are a core skill for project managers. It's this connection which is a fundamental part of the PM role, and connection is built on social intelligence. So in this session with Ruth, we're going to explore social intelligence in project managers and provide some tools for building social intelligence. And as I would say from my discussions with Ruth, we want you to stand by some really important aha moments. So a tiny bit about Ruth, and you will have read more in your handout. Oops, sorry. There we go. Ruth is an experienced program manager. She's led many results-orientated international teams. She's certified as a positive psychology and strength assessment tools person, or in those areas, and we'll hear a bit more about those as we go on. And I'm getting various messages about this being a full webinar, which is distracting me. And your mantra, Ruth: be hopeful, be strong, be brave, and be curious. So over to you. I'll hand over and you'll take us through your presentation. So
thanks very much, Merv.
Thank
be hopeful,
you very much for being
brave, be curious. Seems very appropriate at the moment. So let me just get this presentation going. Hopefully, in practice sessions, we've had a few hiccups with my screen freezing, so I have to keep an eye on what you're seeing to make sure that things are moving along, because I was chatting away yesterday and Merv said, yeah, I can't actually see any of what you're talking about. So we realized that I was having a problem. So Merv, give me a shout if you see any similar problems today. I think I've taken care of it now and know how to fix that. So welcome very much to Social Intelligence for Project Managers. I've added a little extra here about what it is and to go why we need it and how to get it. This topic for me started when I began presenting to live audiences throughout the world, actually, for mainly for PMI, but also other organizations. And I got curious because I asked project managers what they thought about social intelligence and how important it is. And social intelligence was identified by people as very important. And then the second question I would ask is, how do you think we do as project managers in terms of social intelligence? And people would laugh and they'd kind of look at each other and they'd shrug and they'd have these little sort of wry smiles on their faces. And when I dug deeper, having identified social intelligence as something that we really need in order to engage our teams and to be connected with them and connected with our stakeholders, people felt that project managers really aren't very good at it. So I decided to do some research around that. And Merv mentioned that I am in the field of positive psychology now. I'm also a practicing project manager. I continue to project manage for an organization called the VIA Institute on Character after I stalked them and made them give me a job. So I'm very happy about that. And so I started researching, and what I discovered, as you'll see later, is that, yeah, we can be, as a group, a little wanting in terms of social intelligence. And there are two challenges there that I see. One is that it makes it more difficult for us to get what we want, which is to move projects forward and to get people engaged in projects. And it means that we're surrounded by people who are potentially more sophisticated in terms of social intelligence and interacting with other people than we are. Now, I will just caveat that some of my results may have been skewed. There were 461 project managers, and of course, I can't specifically tell what fields they were in. So some people have suggested that maybe they were more in IT, or, you know, some of the standard assumptions we make about when it is that people have more or less social intelligence have been applied to the data, but it's still a good indicator. So I got really fascinated by this. I'm also very interested in mindfulness, and particularly at these times, I'm sure some of you have had changes in the way you're working at the moment, or maybe you're not working so much, which can be very stressful. And so before we get started, we're going to do a couple of things to help us with mindfulness and being grounded and in the moment. So the first thing is these power poses. And if we were in a live session with everybody able to talk, I would ask if anyone's come across these before. One of the most popular TED Talks ever was from Dr. Amy Cuddy, and she did some research on the effect that our posture has on our mood. And what she discovered was that when people adopt a posture where they broaden their shoulders, open up their chest, and lift their chin, they tend to have more confidence. And if anyone's a Grey's Anatomy fan, in 2 or 3 series ago, there was actually a scene where one of the surgeons, Amelia, was going to go in, and she actually adopted a power pose in order to prepare herself to go in and do the surgery. And what's recommended is that you take anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. You adopt one of these poses, whichever one appeals to you most, and you think about a challenge that's coming up. And you imagine the hurdles, not just crossing the finish line, but you imagine the hurdles, and you stand in this position and think through how you're going to overcome your hurdles. And it could be a presentation you have to give, it could be talking to a difficult stakeholder. And what the research shows is that you will feel more confident and be more successful just by taking that short period of time in this powerful position. So remember, wide shoulders, opening up the chest. So, you know, chest forward so that you can get a good deep breath, hands on hips or hands forward behind your head to help with that widening of the chest. And then lifting your chin, because that also helps with that confidence thing. And interestingly, some research done by Matsumoto and Tracy showed that these postures are postures that congenitally blind athletes adopt without ever having seen anybody adopt these postures. And in fact, when they win a competition, they automatically throw their arms up, lift their chins with that sort of sense of pride and accomplishment. And so this is a natural built-in tendency for us to adopt these kind of postures when we're feeling strong. And what neuroscience is showing us is that that feeling, thinking, emotion loop and physical posture loop is a loop. So you can insert yourself into the loop anywhere. You can adopt a posture to increase feelings that go along with that posture. And when you have those feelings, you tend to adopt that posture. So that's the theory, is that you can build your confidence by adopting a confident pose. So I love to share these. A friend of mine actually reproduced these from Amy Cuddy's book, and I have permission to use them for non-profit presentations. So you've got these in the handout, and the handout is actually available to download here as a PDF, so you can download that anytime. So think about that as we're going through these difficult times. How can you use these postures to build your confidence and help you power through? The second thing we're going to do, and this is the beginning of us building social intelligence, is we're going to do a check-in now. I'm going to just pause for a few moments, take a look at this kind of daisy. It's Robert Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions, and take a look and see as you're transitioning. For many of you, it's midday. For me, it's first thing in the morning. Maybe we've got some people who've joined us who are coming up to their evening time. And each of us is making a transition from whatever we were doing before to what we're doing now, which is hopefully listening to me. So I want you to take a moment, take a look at the daisy, and think about what emotions are you experiencing in this moment that you've carried forward from whatever you were doing right before this session. And I will stop talking for a moment. And remember, you may be feeling conflicting emotions. It's possible to feel annoyance about one thing and joy about something else, sadness about one thing, and maybe also some anticipation. We can have mixed emotions, either about the same thing or about different things that are going on at the moment. So I'll stop talking and let you think about it. No need to share, just make a note for yourself of what emotions you're experiencing right now. So having thought about your emotions, now consider which ones are helpful to you as you move forward. We're not trying to push down the ones that maybe we don't like or are not so comfortable. Acknowledge all of them, be aware of them, and then focus on the ones that you most want to cultivate, because they're the most helpful to you, the most productive. And this is another way that we can sort of prime ourselves to be as effective as possible and also as happy as possible. It helps us with our levels of well-being. So why are we talking about social intelligence today? And we're going to have a question in a minute about emotional intelligence and social intelligence. Just a few statistics, some of which you might be familiar with. So Gallup regularly does research on employee engagement in the workplace and has consistently found that engagement is low. Around the world, something like 87% of people in the workplace are not engaged. Other research by Gallup has shown that 70% of people's dissatisfaction, 70% of the reason why people leave a job is something to do with their manager. So, and that includes us. That could be line manager or someone who's managing the activities that the person does. So that would be a project manager as well. And about 70% of people are not aware of what innate strengths they bring to the workplace. They're actually strengths blind. So 70% of people are affected by their manager in a negative way. 70% of people also don't know what they have in themselves to contribute to the workplace. And of course, that includes us. So when we talk about 87% of people are disengaged, there's a pretty good chance that some of those people are us. Certainly some of those people are in our teams. And being aware of that, just realizing that some people, it's not that they're awkward or just don't want to participate, it's that they literally feel disconnected from the purpose of what you're doing, what you're aiming for. What we find is that when people know their strengths, and we're going to talk in a moment about what these strengths are, when people know their strengths, they tend to be more engaged and more productive, significantly so, that they're more engaged in work. We see that people who are aware of what their character strengths are 9 times more likely to report that they're flourishing. People who are aware and actively use their strengths are 18 times more likely to say that they're flourishing. And people who work with a manager who appreciates their strengths are 29 times more likely to say that they are flourishing. So these are powerful tools to be able to spot strengths, and we're going to practice spotting strengths a little later. We also notice that people report higher well-being, so I mentioned that, the flourishing. People tend to have better relationships, and we also see that there are fewer errors in the workplace when people are actively engaging their character strengths. So this is the first question. Merv, I'm going to hand it over to you. So what is the difference between emotional intelligence and social intelligence, do you think?
Okay, so here we go. Sharing my screen now, and I think again you'll be able to see the answers. We've got 1 or 2 already kind of.
I love that it's not too sure, but the perfect. So we've got social is collective and emotional is own. Emotional is one-to-one. Social is one-to-many. Wow, you guys are good. This is excellent definitions here. Knowing oneself and knowing others. Understanding social norms. That's a great one to highlight. Yep, management of the self. Social intelligence is one aspect of that in relation to others. Got a couple of people who are not sure either. Thank you for sharing that with us, that you're not too sure, because that's what we're here for, is to explore it. Some people have obviously got a sense of what the difference is, and we're going to be exploring that more. So I think we can move on now, Merv.
Okay, and as we do that, just a kind of reminder, you're certainly not alone in here. We've got 100 people. We're full, so that's good. And with Menti, you can continue to add your answers as Ruth moves on. So, but back to you, Ruth.
So as some of you highlighted, great point, the difference between emotional and social intelligence. So emotional intelligence is about us being aware of our own feelings, our own sensations, our own thoughts. And that's what we did with that daisy. That's what we're doing when we do a power pose, is we're actually focusing attention on what's going on in our minds at the moment. And one of the things I should have mentioned about the daisy is when we put a name to our emotions, we start to be able to manage them better. There is something called alexithymia, is the inability to recognize and name emotions. And it's becoming more prevalent because we don't really teach people to identify an emotion and describe what it is. That's not something that we tend to cultivate. And more people are struggling with that. When we're able to say, okay, I'm feeling this in this moment, we can choose what to do with that. So that's the emotional intelligence side. Social intelligence, as several of you pointed out, is about the interaction of us with other people. It's reading other people. It is seeing how people are reacting in the moment, how they're feeling. Social intelligence right now is probably being challenged for a lot of people because so many of us are now dealing with our colleagues and friends remotely. So we're not seeing that, we're not having that interaction, the natural human interaction of when we're together. We also pick up on the feeling of the room, the feeling of the people. We're missing out on that because so much of what we're doing is like this. Right now you can't see me, so you can't make an assessment of what my body language is or my facial expressions are. And the same, I can't see you. So we're a little more challenged on that social intelligence piece at the moment. And we may be spending a lot of time in our own emotions, which is also challenging. We want to be able to manage those. So I'm not really going to go so much into emotional intelligence today. I'm going to focus on social intelligence, but they're both really important. So if someone was going to ask you, how would you define social intelligence? And I'll hand it back to you, Merv.
Okay, here we go then. I'll show my screen and we'll go on to the next question. This is really neat, ability to mingle. I like that
I
one.
like that one, yeah. Especially at this time when we're challenged in terms of mingling. So situational awareness, great one.
Yeah.
Getting into interaction, impact, no idea, not sure. Ability to read a room, it's a great definition. Understand a larger group of intelligence. Walking in other shoes, that's a really nice description. All of these are great though, including the ones that are not sure. This is one of the challenges, right? Working with humans, all their abilities and flaws, not always easy to do. Feeling the group mood, yes, picking up on that. And how difficult is that at the moment when you may be dealing with the group remotely on a video call or on telephone call or whatever. So, and working effectively with and as a group, nice ability to read others. Yeah, so I think those are great definitions. And again, you know, kudos to the people who said, yeah, actually don't really know, because that's what we're going to be talking about. So Merv, I think we can head back to the presentation.
Okay. Here we go. That's back to you. And just so,
I like that.
Okay, I was just going to say, so people are aware, these Menti results will be available to everyone afterwards. So again,
yeah, and
that's going to be useful.
I can't wait to see those. That's really cool. So what is social intelligence? As people highlighted, again, great job. It's understanding the motives and feelings of people around us. It's being able to fit in. Someone said about recognizing the context that they're in. So being able to adapt our behavior, our language, the way we present ourselves according to what group we're in, and every group has a slightly different dynamic. It's being able to put other people at their ease. So recognizing what someone else across from you needs in order for them to contribute the most, for them to be comfortable in presenting themselves. It's remembering to ask the quiet person what thoughts they have, because maybe they're not so pushy in a meeting. It's remembering to say to the person who's got lots of ideas, you obviously have lots of ideas, and then inviting other people to chip in, you know, what do other people want to add? It's really making the group work together, being that sort of glue that sticks them together. It's being able to understand how to communicate information. And if you've ever done something that I admit I have done myself as a project manager, and I know we had a lot of project delivery people today, one of the things that I used to fall foul of was I'd write the most amazing status email. And I would send it out on a Monday to everybody, and it would have every detail of everything that we were doing, exactly where we're at, what challenges we've had, what risks have been raised, what issues we're facing, and so on and so forth. And I would spend the next week unpicking that and unraveling it, because some people wanted a much more high-level view. Some people wanted that real detail. Other people wanted something in between. Other people wanted something visual and not something wordy. So basically what I was doing was sending out one communication as though one size fits all, and missing the mark on probably 80% of the people who were connected with my project. And I quickly learned that it was a false efficiency to think that I could just have one form of update and it would work for everybody. So having that sensitivity to what different people need in order to understand information, it's that building connection, so that two-way interaction with people. And we often refer to people who are high in social intelligence as being people savvy. You know, they seem to just have a natural feel for how to handle people. So next test of the day, who knows the golden rule? I'll hand it back to you, Merv.
Okay, so here we go. We have had a comment from John that he's noted he's got to refresh the browser to then kind of keep up with the questions in Mentimeter. So there's a tip: if you're not able to do it, then simply hit refresh, and it should bring you to the right place. So
my favorite one of the day is he who has the gold makes the rules. What is it? So that's very interesting. It's very interesting to see different audiences. So when I'm presenting in the US, the golden rule is something that people can quote really quickly. So someone has it there: treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Interesting. So it's really interesting. Thank you very much again for sharing. There's a lot of people saying listening, that it's always have a good supply of paper, especially at the moment, right? I don't know how it is in Europe and the UK, but yeah, toilet paper's been the thing that people have been going after, and bottled water as well. I mean, I really don't quite understand why that's the concern, but anyway. All right, so this is Stay True to Yourself. There's some great suggestions here, so I think we're good. Merv, we'll go back to the presentation.
Okay, here we go.
So this is Grand Central, the last time that it was super busy. Don't know when we'll see a picture like that again, but I do particularly like this picture. So yes, treat others as you want to be treated. Now, of course, there's a challenge with this. A friend of mine, I'm vegetarian, and a friend of mine, very kindly, when I was celebrating something, she actually wanted to take me out, and she said, don't worry about a thing, I'm going to take you out, and we're going to have a really great celebration, because this is very exciting. And so I left it to her. And as I said, I'm vegetarian. So we ended up going to a steakhouse, which is her absolute favorite place to go. She loves the place. She knew the people that work there and everything. You know, from that perspective, it was really great from a social perspective, but it didn't suit me. She treated me the way she would like to be treated, which is to be taken to a steakhouse for a celebratory dinner. And I ended up with a baked potato and a plate of broccoli, because literally there was nothing else there that I could eat. So that's what happens sometimes when we treat others as we want to be treated, is that we miss the mark for them. We miss out on what they actually would respond positively to. So our next question is, what is the platinum rule? So back to you, Merv.
Okay, here we go, and show my screen.
Treat others as they want to be treated. Treat people, you guys are good. Look at that. It doesn't take much, does it, to be able to start to figure it out. Treat others as they want to be treated, as long as it's legal. My mother would have said it didn't have to be legal, you just shouldn't get caught. So understand your audience and treat them appropriately.
Did you see that one?
Sacrificial love. Interesting. I'd love to know more about that if the person's got time to email me. A principle you can't break. That's a nice alternative definition. Yeah. This has nothing to do with project management. Well, that is a very interesting perspective, because as a project manager, understanding other people, we've already touched on the communication aspect, understanding how to connect with people seems pretty important as a project manager. Maybe it depends on what field you're in, or maybe you're working in smaller teams, and so it's a much more manageable task. I've been someone who has worked on a lot of large teams, particularly international teams. And so this social intelligence piece has been critically important and quite often missing. So Merv, I think we're good there with the
okay,
definitions.
there we go, there we are.
So yes, the platinum rule is treating others as they want to be treated. And we face a new challenge there, which is, how do we know how they want to be treated? So we'll keep that question up there for us to consider in a moment. We're going to take a quick look at why social intelligence matters, and maybe that will address that point of the person who said this has got nothing to do with project management. And actually someone else said that to me once in a presentation. They said that they actually thought the fact that project managers tend to be low in social intelligence, as you'll see in a moment, was a positive thing, because they should be task oriented and really focused on getting the work done and not get tangled up in people's personal interpretation or personal perspective. So what we see from the research is that social intelligence matters because it increases our verbal fluency. We're able to articulate ideas more clearly, and we're able to be conversational with different kinds of people. We have a greater understanding when we're high in social intelligence of the social roles and rules that apply in the context we're in. So different organizations, different teams have a different dynamic, as I mentioned before. It does support effective listening. Some of you mentioned before for the golden rule that was about listening. So social intelligence gives us a better ear for listening to what people are saying and also what they're not saying. It's that understanding what makes other people tick, so it helps us motivate people to do the things that we want them to do. And it allows us to apply different roles or play different roles in different contexts. So there may be circumstances where, as a project manager, we want to be more collaborative with people, we're more curious, we're asking questions of them. And then there may be other times where we're actually being more definitive about what needs to happen next and how things are going to move forward, or what the priorities are for today or this week or whatever it is. And we adapt our role playing more effectively the higher our social intelligence. It also helps us manage the impression we make on people. So that's that we're managing the way we present ourselves to other people. Also, what we find, and I love to ask the question, why have I used this picture here of elephants? I'm a big fan of elephants. One of the reasons I choose this picture is that elephants are the animal with pretty much the highest level of social intelligence. They're very group oriented, also a maternal, women oriented grouping, and they are very sensitive to other elephants. They'll welcome other elephants into their herd. Very much geared towards looking after the group rather than the individual. And what we've seen from the research is that social intelligence also helps us have a more pleasurable life because we feel more connected. It's a great buffer against stress and trauma. So being able to read other people, adapt our message and our conduct to reflect what those people need in order to make a strong connection, also buffers us against stress and trauma. Again, very important at the moment. And as I mentioned, like these elephants, it supports positive group behavior. And for a lot of project managers, group behavior is very important. You've got a bunch of people, stakeholders, team members, the sponsor, customers, whoever it is, that are all, you're trying to move along in the same direction, and that the social intelligence supports that. A couple of interesting statistics on project managers and communication. So PMI, actually Andy Crow did some research and established that the best project managers spend 90% of their time communicating. I sometimes like to ask audiences whether we spend 90% of our time communicating because we're good at it or because we're not good at it. Maybe we could be more efficient. As I mentioned before, we don't always make the smartest choices in terms of, or I don't anyway, in terms of how I communicate things. So we spend 90% of our time communicating. In the US, research from Atlassian shows that 59% of US workers say communication is the biggest obstacle to their team's success. So we're doing a lot of it, and yet it seems that a lot of it may miss the mark. As an interesting sideline, I did some other research that showed that 90% of project managers believe they're essential to project success. The good news is that's not so far off what their other team members believe, which is about 75% of non-project managers on teams say that project managers are essential to project success. So it's not too awful, but there is a gap there. I just throw that in as an interesting fact. So what are character strengths? So these character strengths, it's the Vera Institute on Character, where I now work part-time because I love the work they've done so much. It's evidence-based, and they've identified 24 character strengths that are universal. That means they apply to everybody in the world, regardless of culture, ethnicity, religion, language, age. These are all strengths that are recognized across the world by everybody. There's been research that shows that the way we rate these strengths is very similar across countries. Even though we might expect that some countries would rank some higher and lower. There are some that typically show up as higher ranked strengths. There are ones that very often show up as lower ranked strengths. We could go into that another time if people are interested. But these 24 strengths are evidence-based, researched. 50 experts came together from different fields and went around the world to do this research. And social intelligence is one of those character strengths. So that means we can assess social intelligence, and that's how I did that with the project managers, was to actually use the survey, and you have access to the free survey with this link here, and you can get that from the download, and I think Merv is going to share that with you after the event as well. And you can take your free assessment. You will get it takes about 15 minutes to fill in, and you will get an instant ranking of your 24 strengths. And just a couple of points about that. The ones at the top of your ranking are the ones that are most like you and are most comfortable for you to use. They're called signature strengths. And the ones that are lower down in your ranking, they're not absent. We don't measure weaknesses with this assessment. We're just measuring relative strengths. So the ones you see at the bottom, and it's very common for people to sort of turn to the bottom and say, okay, so what am I no good at? The ones at the bottom are just the ones that are hardest to use. They're the least comfortable for you to use, but they're still there. We all have all 24. So I measured that in project managers to see where we stand in relation to other people. And the blue line here is actually the average of US. So honesty, fairness, kindness, judgment, curiosity are typically reported as high strengths in the US. That's true for the world at large. And you'll see that the lowest ranked strengths are self-regulation, humility, prudence, spirituality, and zest. That's pretty much true across the world. There are 2 countries that rank spirituality higher than the bottom 5, but in general, this spread is pretty typical of different countries. And then the orange line is us. It's my 460 project managers who took the survey. And what we find is that we seem to be lower than other people in social intelligence and perspective. And we seem to be somewhat higher as a group. So individuals will be maybe different to this, but as a group, we seem to be higher in the strengths of perseverance, forgiveness, and prudence. And there's a couple of others there, leadership and teamwork seem to be on the high side for us as well. So here's a thought, something for you to consider, and I'll hand it back to you, Merv. So one of our higher strengths is perseverance. What are some pitfalls of that strength, do you think, as a project manager?
Okay, here we go. So we've already got some good answers coming in. And again, if you're new to menti.com, then please do log in. That's the code. And we'd love to see more answers coming in as we go through. We'll take your questions at any stage, either via Menti and or via GoToWebinar.
Yeah, so keeping going when we stop with a bone, won't let go. I like that description. Not knowing when to admit defeat, could be trying the same things over and over. It can be draining, very good point. Pig-headedness, yes, when we go too far with perseverance, we can become pig-headed. Not making a timely decision to change things, nice job. Okay, so I think we can tunnel vision, great definitions. Perseverance is very good in general, however, it's important to know when to quit. Yes, exactly, it's that balance, right? It's finding the optimal level of all of these strengths, that all 24 of the strengths. And in the handout, you'll see that that thing with the icons and the descriptions of each strength is available to you as the back page of the handout. So Merv, I think we can go back to the presentation.
Okay, there we go, back to you.
So one of the challenges with our strengths, and so as I highlighted, some of our top strengths as a group, as project managers, are prudence, perseverance, and forgiveness. And all of these are great strengths. All 24 strengths are great strengths to have. There are no bad strengths. What we find is there are some definite advantages to having these strengths as project managers. So prudence is the planning strength, and we tend to be higher in it than other people. So that seems like a positive if that's our role. We keep going in the face of obstacles and adversity, so we don't give up at the first hurdle, which again is very important on projects, to not just be stumped because something didn't go the way we planned. And we're high in forgiveness, which means we have a tendency to focus on a solution to a problem rather than looking for who caused it. So we're not into the blame game so much. We tend to be saying, okay, so how do we move forward from here? Of course, there are some potential risks to those. So prudence, the planning strength, we can get into analysis paralysis, especially with our perseverance. We can, you know, just do one more cycle of planning, one more cycle of planning. And I know some project managers who love the planning phase of a project, but they're really not that excited by the execution, which may sound surprising. And then we have other people who are really into the execution, but the whole planning thing is kind of tedious, which reflects that although these average results are useful, individuals have different strengths. We've already highlighted that perseverance can lead to us being in a position where we won't stop, we won't listen to people's feedback, we ignore the signs that a project is off the rails, we ignore the signs that a project is no longer relevant. We're sometimes the last people to realize that a project should stop or change. And the downside of potentially too much forgiveness is on the upside, we don't blame people, we don't go looking for who it is that caused the problem, but we may be hesitant to really dig in and get to the root cause of something, meaning that problems and errors and obstacles come up time and time again. And I think we see this with when we're doing things like, you know, the sort of debrief at the end of a project or at the end of a sprint, where we're doing a retrospective or lessons learned. very often we catalogue the lessons learned, but that information isn't integrated into the planning for the future. So we've mentioned there are 24 strengths, and we're actually going to do a little exercise now, because this is about building social intelligence, is being able to observe the strengths in others. So I'm going to put up the 24 strengths. You can also use the handout. As I said, the back page of the handout shows the 24 strengths. And I'm going to share a story with you. And I want you to listen out for the strengths that you hear. And there's no wrong answers. I just want you to, and we're also going to demonstrate strengths blindness with this activity as well. So this was a colleague of mine who was on a training course. I'm certified in the mindfulness-based strengths practice. And one of my fellow students, she experienced in the second week of class, that her husband had a heart attack, and she wrote this story. She's from Iceland. So I'm going to read it exactly as she wrote it. Her English is fantastic, but there's a couple of times where it's a little different than we would say. In last week, and remember, you're watching out for these strengths. All 24 are up on the slide here. See what strengths you hear. Last week, our second week in the course, my husband had a heart attack. He's a strong man and came walking home from work in the morning after being there for an hour or two. He said he felt heaviness in his chest and pain in the jaws and left shoulder. Did I think he should go to see a doctor? I thought so, and drove him to the hospital near us. He was immediately put on an ambulance. I insisted I go with him, and we went to Reykjavik on blue lights. In the ambulance, we stayed relatively calm and talked and joked. I had my hand on his head to calm us both, but I will never forget the moment when I lost that calm and the reality of the situation became clear. I looked forward, sitting in the back of the ambulance, out of the front window, and saw the biggest traffic road in Reykjavik, Miklabraut, empty. The police had closed all intersections with police cars with blinking blue lights, and we drove on priority speed straight to the cardiology department. He was treated for 100% and 90% blocked coronary arteries, and in less than an hour it was all over, and he sat laughing in his hospital bed. In the meantime, I had first collapsed, shaking with tears, as soon as he was in the hands of the doctors. Then I sat and waited in a quiet room. I didn't have any phone, so I could not call our children and parents. I decided to be in the moment, even if this was a hard one, and sat down and turned my chair to the window and had another moment I think I will never forget. Out of the window, I saw Hallgrímskirkja, which was the church in the picture on the previous slide, one of the defining buildings in Reykjavik. In the foreground were big bristlecone pines. The sun was coming up. The time was between 11 and 12, and it is still mostly dark in Iceland this time of year. Lovely winter light, yellow, pink, light blue, cold but beautiful light. It started snowing, these rare big snowflakes which we call Hundslafadriffa in Icelandic, dog's paw snow. And even more rare, there was no wind. The snowflakes floated down calmly. It was such a powerful yet peaceful moment. I felt like the universe had made this scene just for me to calm down. I accepted it, looked inwards, and tried to sort out what I was feeling. Even if I was worried, I trusted he was in the best hands. Then my husband came up, laughing, as I said, and since then I have been overwhelmed with a feeling of gratitude. I'm thankful to all the people who took part in the healthcare, the ambulance workers, the people who stopped at the intersection. I appreciate that the weather was harmless and the roads almost clean. In the days before, the road was closed because of snow and storm, and later this day it snowed a lot. I am glad I was home when my mate came home, or he might have had a nap instead of seeking help. A lot to be thankful for. I'm even grateful for not having my phone. If I would have missed the wonderful window moment and made myself and others worry about the situation. Instead, I called everyone afterwards with good news. Then when life got back to normal in a few days, I took up my mindfulness practice and noticed that the gratitude spilled over into most of what I did. For example, in the practice of doing some routine mindfully, as in a shower, I felt gratitude to parts of my body I don't normally give thanks, like my toes. And in the shop, I appreciated all the selections of foods of all kinds and think of all the people and work involved. I'm not trying, it just spills over. So I would like to ask you now, what strengths did you hear in the story? And Merv, I think you're going to take us through that with another Menti.
I am. So in terms of the layout of the screen, I changed this at the last moment. I realized that actually we'd be better looking at this as a word cloud.
Oh,
so
nice. Yes.
So thank you for the your responses, but it gives us a good idea of the kind of the most popular responses.
Yeah, so we've got gratitude, love, hope, spirituality, all showing up. But look at the number of strengths that you're seeing there. And we've just started talking about strengths, and you're already spotting them, and you're already amazingly teamwork. I love the highlighting of teamwork. Yeah, all those people that came together, appreciation of beauty and excellence, you know, all of that. When she's looking out, she noticed the bristlecone pines and everything. Amazing. So there are all these strengths you've noticed, and this is something that we often see. When I tell this story, it's quite common to identify pretty close to all of the strengths. The interesting thing is that when she was asked what strengths they used, that she used, she highlighted fairness, judgment, humor, and perseverance. 4 strengths. So you remember at the beginning, I said that many people are strengths blind. Look at the number of strengths that you saw compared with the number of strengths that she is aware that she was using. And this is someone who practices mindfulness. So we have an opportunity to help people see the strengths that they bring to a situation, that they bring to a team, and to build on those strengths. So look at that, 70 answers, love that. So Merv, maybe you want to just hand it back to me and we'll keep moving.
Here we go.
So a few things to think about. We're not going to go into this, but something for you to think about in terms of your strengths. So imagine you're at the hospital with this person. How would you handle that situation? What would you do? And you know, for all we know, we may be seeing more of that in the future, of sitting with people who are waiting to find out what's going on with their loved ones. You know, what do you say to them? What strengths do you use? So think of those ones that you've just observed. Which of those strengths would be helpful for you in supporting someone else? And the answer is probably different depending on how well you know this person. You know, are they a family member that you've known all your life? Is it a colleague that you've just met on this recent project? And everything in between. So thinking about how we want to apply our strengths, and remembering we all have all 24, is another step towards building social intelligence. So let's go back to that question, and Merv, I'm going to hand it back to you. Let's go back to the question that someone else actually raised, which is, what has this got to do with project managers? So how will social intelligence help? And look at that, a third, helping to tailor communication, making us more aware of what motivates people, helping us to connect with team members. There are also benefits to us. We didn't put these as options. Helping us to connect with team members is by far and away the winner at the moment. And in actual fact, there are no wrong answers here, because social intelligence helps with all of these things. It helps us be more aware of what motivates individuals. These character strengths we're talking about are their core motivators. People's signature strengths, usually around the top 5 in their profile, are the things that are core to them. So mine are appreciation of beauty and excellence, curiosity, bravery, fairness, and gratitude. Take one of those away from me. If you told me that I can't express gratitude, or I can't exercise my appreciation of beauty and excellence, I would feel as though part of me is missing. That's how important our signature strengths are. So as we build awareness of people's signature strengths, or their strengths in general, we're able to see more of what motivates them. We're also able to tailor communication. So some people are going to appreciate, you know, people high in gratitude or appreciation of beauty and excellence or hope are going to appreciate communications that are more geared towards the upside of the project, how things are going well. And then you've got other people with perspective and self-regulation and prudence who want to know the nitty-gritty, you know, where do we need to apply some more attention? So it helps with all of these things. And if it's okay, Merv, I will take back control.
Okay, here we go.
So how do we use what we've learned? We've learned about character strengths. We've learned the importance of social intelligence. We have done some strength spotting. So you have just done the very first thing that builds social intelligence with this tool of character strengths. It starts with you, and it starts with you spotting strengths in other people. And we use this model called the C model, which is we see strengths, explain what we've seen, and then express appreciation for them. And one of my favorite things to do as a project manager, and it's even easier to do it if we're working remotely, is to have the list of strengths. And as I mentioned, they're in the handout in that sort of the list of icons with the descriptions of each strength. I have the list of strengths, and at every meeting I go to, I listen out for one person's strengths. So whoever's presenting in the meeting, especially if it gets to a boring part of the meeting, I will have that list and I will make a note of the strengths I hear in them as they're talking. And what I'll do afterwards is go up to them or call them or message them and say, I saw in the meeting that you were using humility. I saw it when you took a step back and let other people come forward with their ideas. You didn't push your idea. And I appreciate that, because we got some really great additional ideas that we wouldn't have come to if you had just kept pushing for the idea that you'd already had. So highlighting it for them, it's nerve-wracking. People get really edgy about doing it. I have never had anyone say, I don't know what you're talking about. That strength isn't a strength of mine. I've never had anyone say, I don't want that strength. You know, I wouldn't want anyone to think I'm socially intelligent. I wouldn't want anyone to think I'm brave or creative or fair. No one's ever done that to me. Sometimes they are surprised and they'll say, no one's ever highlighted that in me before. It's something new about them that they haven't heard anyone else notice. Sometimes it's that you've noticed something that they really do feel is core to them, and that they don't feel that people often see it. So that really connects to, them with you. And what you'll notice is when you start doing this to other people, they start doing it to other people too. It's the ripple effect. And I just do one person each day. Don't go crazy. And I recommend that you try that for a week. Set yourself the goal for a week. It can be someone that you're living with. It can be, you know, your child. It can be anybody. It could be the grocery store person, you know, that you admire their bravery for still showing up to sell food, you know, when there's so much stress going on about health at the moment. And each day find one person and highlight one strength. You don't have to go crazy and give them a whole shopping list of them. Just one strength. How did you see it and why do you appreciate it? So just to recap, our social intelligence, we know, protects us against stressors because it builds that communication and connection with other people. We can measure social intelligence with the character strength survey, and you're all going to have access to that survey afterwards, so you can find out about yours. And a way to build social intelligence is to start spotting strengths. So just use that C method. So see, explain, appreciate, and start spotting strengths in other people, spot them and share what you see. So that is my tip for there. So we're going to come back to our quick check-in about us now. So this is emotional intelligence. We're going back to that. I'm going to give you a few moments to look at the daisy and consider what emotions are you feeling now in this moment. And I'll just give you a moment to think about that. So again, we're coming up to a transition. You've been in this session now for about 50 minutes or so, and you're about to transition to whatever you're going to be doing the rest of the day. And being aware of the emotions you're feeling in this moment, highlighting the ones that you want to pay attention to and keep with you as you move forward is really helpful. Naming your emotions puts them in, it actually moves your awareness of your emotions from your limbic system to your frontal cortex, which means that you have more capacity to manage those emotions. Practicing naming them is really important because so many people don't know how to do that. And one of the things I ask you to consider is, how are your emotions different now than when we started? And for some people, they may not have changed, but for a lot of people, you'll notice that they have changed subtly or dramatically. And that is a reminder that however strongly we feel our emotions, however much we may feel stuck in an emotion, they don't last forever, they're fleeting. So it's a bit like the weather in certain parts of the UK. You know, if you don't like it, wait a moment and it will change. I used to live in Bath and it was a bit like that. So remembering that, you know, we can feel overwhelmed with sadness or overwhelmed with anger or overwhelmed with fear, and remembering that those emotions don't last forever. In the space of 50 minutes, most of you will have experienced that your emotions have subtly shifted or even dramatically shifted, as I mentioned. And so this is a good reminder. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. We have a few minutes to take some additional questions, and I think you're going to put a different slide up for that, right, Merv?
I am, yes, indeed. So Thanks ever so much, Ruth. That's absolutely fascinating, and I think there's a great deal that we can do to apply that immediately. So thank you very much. The slide I've put up does show that you can ask questions if you like within Menti, or you can ask them within GoToWebinar. In fact, we haven't got any questions, so I think that's probably a good thing. We will at least finish to time. There is the PDU code. You can read it there for yourselves, those that can read it. Charlie Oscar, so a bit of phonetic, Charlie Oscar 75, Whiskey November, India, Kilo, Lima, Echo. So I used to be a police officer, so I know my phonetic alphabet. So, okay.
That second character is an O, not a 0.
Good point. I think it's the way it should be. Should it be a 0? Probably. Try both. Try both. I think probably a 0 actually.
I think that's a 0. It's a bit less squat and rounds than an O.
Okay. So I think I've got a observation from Penny that she's asked quite a number of questions by Menti, but they don't seem to have appeared in here. So I can pick that afterwards, Penny. It may well be just the responses that have been displayed, but we'll pick that one up afterwards. So again, thank you for your participation. Just before we go, and I know we've done some reflection as we've gone through this, but we're a great believer in reflective practice as part of professional development. So we'd like you to take a moment just to think about what you've learned or what you will do differently as a result of attending this webinar. So if we can hear from you now, this would be really good. It's a moment of intentionality, and we'll just see those come in. You will be able to respond afterwards.
And for people who did pose a question and their question didn't get answered, feel free to email me.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I know your next comment, Penny. We'll have a chat afterwards and see if we can actually resolve that. So thanks ever so much for your observations that are coming in, and hopefully that will allow you to kind of start to apply these and take them forward. There is, we do have plans to run further sessions with Ruth, and we're thinking that might well be part of a series of masterclasses that we're looking at or also putting on. So there we are. There's Ruth's.
Can I just take a couple of comments, both really quickly, based on the feedback that people were giving? So a couple of people had said they're going to use it with the team. Yes, this free assessment, you can share that link with whoever you want to, so that other people can benefit from it. There's no limit on that. And some people had said they're going to try it with their family. It is a really great thing to have, you know, like strengths call outs over dinner and stuff, where people talk about what strengths they've used in the day. I'm thrilled to see that people feel that this is useful and that they're going to practice with the C method. I'd love to get feedback from people on how that goes. So feel free to email me with that. And again, if there's any questions that pop up afterwards, because I know sometimes it's, as you're thinking about it, you go, oh, I wish I'd asked that. So yeah, do let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to answer them. But good luck to you using this, and be prepared to be pleasantly surprised.
Thank you for that. And again, keep that feedback flowing. There's Ruth's contact details, and I know that she can also be contacted via LinkedIn. And then, as I say, upcoming events, do please keep checking back on the PMI UK site for our digital events. We've got 3 that I've listed there. So there's a joint event with the Project Data Analytics Meetup folk. It's a lunchtime one, and it's entitled Using AI to Manage the Human Side of Projects. We have another session on the 8th of April. That's going to be the first of our masterclasses at 5 o'clock British Summer Time, and that's entitled Value-Based Business Cases, and that's with Claire Della. And then finally, for now, or finally on this list, 21st of April, another lunchtime one, building the skills of a resilient project team. And that's with Jonathan Norman of the Major Projects Association. As I say, we will list a whole lot more. And Ruth, I think you've agreed then to follow up and give us a couple more sessions.
Yes, and I'm always happy to do one on mindfulness and stress management too. So.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks one and all, and have a good day wherever you happen to be, most likely at home. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks very much, Merv. Thank you, everybody.